Good morning, Mr. Duff.
Good morning.
So when you're ready, you may begin with your opening statement.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody that knows me, any of the lawyers that know me, know that I'm pretty straightforward and to the point? So one of the things I want to address right out of the box is if you watched the media last week, read the newspaper, got on the internet, you would realize that I represent Jerry Foxhoven. He used to work for the Iowa Department of Human Services, and that I am, at some point, will be filing a lawsuit against Governor Reynolds and her staff. So I will tell you, my timing is not very good. But I did apply and complete the application for this before Mr. Foxhoven ended up at my doorstep. So I would say to you, I'm in the business of filing lawsuits and representing people, and I don't turn away what I believe to be good cases with good clients. And I have every confidence that if I were honored enough to have an interview in front of the governor, that she would be able to put that aside and realize that I am doing what lawyers do, which is represent their clients. So I felt like I should get that out of the way first. One of the things I wanted to talk to you about is what I could bring to the court, maybe that others can't. I've been a practicing lawyer for 30 years. Probably 25 of those I've been a plaintiff's lawyer. First 5 years I did defense work. So I've done both sides of the V. I have worked as a mediator and an arbitrator. I have a wide, unlike, I guess I don't know what some of the other applicants' cases are like, but I have a statewide practice. I represent people in Sioux City and Davenport and every point in between. I have a wide practice area. I do, like most plaintiffs' lawyers, I do plaintiffs' personal injury work, but I'll do medical negligence cases, product liability cases, not many because they're expensive and difficult cases, but I will certainly investigate and take one, and those are very complicated areas of the law. Probably half of my practice is employment discrimination and civil rights law, race, sex, age, disability, and civil rights. And that is also a complicated area of the law. The law changes quickly. We've had 2 Supreme Court decisions in the last 4 months that have changed the landscape of employment discrimination cases. So I have a breadth of experience representing Iowans. I would tell you that I represent and have over the years represented Iowans of every socioeconomic status, every race, gender. I've represented doctors, lawyers, janitors, construction workers, nurses. You name a profession, I've probably represented them. And I point that out because I believe that Iowans, when I represent someone, when you sign someone up as a client, they're with you for at least 2 years. I've had clients, a couple of clients that were with me, I have one that's been with me for 6 years. So these people become part of your life. You get to know them, you get to know their families. Sometimes you go to their home, you get to know their friends. You get to know probably more than they really want you to know about their life. But it's been a real privilege and an honor, and I think what you get from that is a real understanding of what makes people tick, and whether it's a doctor or the person that picks the garbage up out of your waste can at the office. So what I've learned over the years as a lawyer representing people, one of the things, and I've been very passionate about it, but one of the things that I have as much passion for is the justice system. And I believe that the courthouse door is the last bastion of individual liberty and freedom. It is the one place where an individual, the janitor, can take on the largest corporation in the world, and it's where corporations can sue one another, companies can sue one another, and what they're entitled to, and what we're all entitled to, is a fair playing field. Not a tilted field for the plaintiff, not a tilted field for the defendant, but a fair playing field. And I believe what I can bring to the court is that fairness to the court. I have over the years, developed a profound respect for the justice system and realized that the thing that makes it work is the moderation, the balance, and the stability of the system. And if any of those are missing, people lose confidence in the system. And when they lose confidence, that is a problem. The courts need to be legitimate, no matter who you are, no matter whether you're a corporation or an individual. You have to feel like you've had a fair day in court. And what I've learned through doing litigation for the last 25 to 30 years is that in the end, whether there's a trial or a settlement or a mediated settlement, people often find accountability. And I say accountability because sometimes we hold the defendant accountable, but sometimes often my clients, the individuals, take accountability for their own conduct. What did I do? Did I have some health issue that contributed? Because I was a smoker, did that make my issue worse? So I think there's accountability that takes place on both sides, and that's a good thing in terms of how the system works. Accountability, and I think in the end, people have to feel like, even if they're on the losing end, that at least I got my day in court, I got to be heard, I was treated fairly, I didn't win, but I understand why I didn't win. And I think if we ever fall short of that, people will lose confidence in the civil justice and the criminal justice system. And in my view, people have lost confidence in some of our other branches of government, and it's been, I think it's not been helpful. So this is the last place where I think we need to maintain that, and I understand that perfectly. And as a justice or a judge, I would do everything in my power to make sure that fairness and even-handedness is the predominant thing that drives me. So with that, I will try to answer whatever questions you might have.
Thank you. Thank you. So we'll start with Mr. Horbach.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have no questions.
Mr. Bevel.
Thank you. Mr. Duff, you made reference to the importance of confidence in the system. Is there an area in the court system that you're concerned that the public is losing confidence?
Well, I feel I do have a belief that, particularly at the national level, that the court system is becoming politicized. And unfortunately, I see that creeping into our system, the Iowa system, which I think for years has had a reputation of being not a political system. And I think there has been, I'm afraid that that's been creeping into our system, and I think that undermines people's confidence in the court.
Thank you.
Mrs. Sinclair.
No questions.
Ms. Valentine.
Thank you. Mr. Duff, you bring to the table quite vast trial experience. Do you feel that that's important to have that experience represented on the Court of Appeals bench, and if so, why?
I do. I think it is important. I think it's important, no matter if you're going to be a trial judge, an appellate on the Court of Appeals or the Supreme Court, that you've tried some cases. And I don't mean 2 or 3. I mean tried some cases. Go in there and you win some, you lose some, And you learn, from my experience, you learn more from the ones you lose than, and unfortunately I've had a bad streak this last year, so I've learned a lot. But I do think it's important to have the experience, because what you're judging as a Court of Appeals judge is primarily looking for errors of law, and what did the trial judge do? Did the judge make an error? If he did, obviously you have to give the judge a lot of discretion, because he was there assessing the credibility of the witnesses if it was a trial, a bench trial. And I think also to really have a healthy respect for the jury system, and to give deference to the decisions of the jury, because that is sort of the lodestar of how the system is supposed to work. And believe me, there's lots of cases where I just think I have no idea how they came to the conclusion that they did, because I didn't win. But you got to respect it, and unless the judge made some mistake or let in some evidence he shouldn't have, then you just got to live with it. But I think having been through that process, and it's one thing to be the trial judge, and it's another thing to be in the ring, so to speak, and to be the plaintiff, which is to have the burden of proof as well. It's a difficult task, so hopefully I answered your question.
Thank you.
Mr. Berger.
I have no questions.
Ms. Stanger.
No questions.
Ms. Pearson.
Yes, I enjoyed our conversation and learned a lot about your background. And during that time, you commented, one of your first positions was with the Eastern District of Virginia, and what a wonderful opportunity that was to help shape the direction that now you're pursuing and have been throughout your career. What were some of the qualities or characteristics that you learned and that helped guide you forward, and that you utilize today as you're practicing?
Well, it was Judge Clark is who I worked for. I found him to be, he was very quick. He knew the law kind of right off the top of his head, which right out of law school, it was just like, wow, that's really amazing. I can't believe he knows all that. But one of the things that was interesting about him was he's an Article III judge. He was appointed by Gerald Ford, so if it gives you some idea of how long ago this was. And he hired myself from Midwest. I had a hard time. I had to tell a lot of my other law clerks that I went to Drake and not to Duke. But the other law clerk he hired was also from the Midwest, and compared to him, we were moderate to liberal. But I think he wanted us there kind of as a team of rivals to bounce things off of, because he was interested in knowing what people that thought differently than he did. And sometimes we were able to convince him, maybe that sentence is a little too harsh for that guy. Did you take this into account? And sometimes, he didn't always listen to us, but I think he wanted us there as sort of a sounding board, so he wasn't in a bubble. And I thought that was very admirable of him. And he was just an incredibly nice man. He used to take us out on his boat, so that was nice. But it was a wonderful, wonderful experience, and it made me realize that at some point that is what I wanted to do, in sort of at the end of my career, which apparently I'm getting close to. So,
Thank you.
Mr. Gray.
I have no questions.
Ms. Law.
There are people that say that you need to have some district court experience as a judge to be on the appellate court. How would you answer that?
I think you have to have trial experience, whether that's as a district judge or as a trial lawyer. And as I said before, I think it's important. Certainly, trial judges bring a different perspective to the table, because essentially what the Court of Appeals is doing is examining the decisions made by the trial judge, mostly. So I certainly can't discount that as a good experience. But I think there's a difference between having to to actually have the pressure on. I mean, the minute you walk into the courtroom, the pressure's on, and you have to perform. Everybody's watching you. The jurors, I've learned all the jurors are watching you pretty much all the time. And you have the burden of proof. I think it just is I don't want to say it's more difficult, but it's a different perspective. And I certainly do think district judges have something to bring to the table in these kind of cases or for this sort of position. But to me, it's the litigation experience that's probably, whether as a trial judge or as a trial lawyer, I think is the more important.
Thank you.
Mr. Goodman.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Mr. Duff, thank you for applying. I want to ask a question that I plan to ask a number of different applicants, and that is the rural-urban debate. That's well known in the legislature. I sometimes wonder what role it should play in the court selection, and I'd like to get your views on that. We have 4 Court of Appeals judges currently from Des Moines, and then the others are from Waterloo, Marshalltown, Knoxville, Okoboji, and Washington. What benefit do you believe there is to selecting judges from around the state versus from a particular place, and what weight should we give to that in our considerations?
Well, I guess my feeling on that, and had that discussion with one of your other commissioners, and I've given that some additional thought. I personally think that given given the electronic filing, given that a plaintiff or a defendant is a plaintiff or a defendant, whether they're in Davenport or Sioux City, and when I represent someone from either one of those places or any point in between, the law's the same. The facts are different, but the law's the same. And to me, I don't see it as a particularly, and obviously there's people that are going to disagree with me, but I don't see it as a particularly pertinent or relevant factor. I do believe, and I'm probably shooting myself in the foot here, I mean, I do think gender and race and ethnicity is probably more important than geographic. The folks from Des Moines and Sioux City and Davenport and so forth, we have a representative government, and they have legislators and senators that represent them. A judge's job is not to represent Des Moines or Sioux City. A judge's job, and particularly at the Court of Appeals, is to apply the law to the facts.
Okay, thank you very much.
Mr. Sukup.
Good morning.
Good morning.
From your work in the maritime law, what did you bring back to Iowa with that experience?
Not much. What it did, I mean, it was very interesting. I learned a lot about tugboats and fishing boats and stuff like that, which I've not used at all. But what I think it does underscore, at least, is my ability to learn other areas of the law in a pretty rapid order. Those were different. I mean, they were federal laws, and I had a good teacher, but within a year or so, I was up to speed on all of that. Of course, it's been 25 years, and I might be able to do a Jones Act case. I haven't. I'd have to find somebody that worked on a river, I think, to get one of those. So,
Thank you.
Interesting, but not particularly useful anymore.
Well, thank you. Mr. Duff, we're out of time today, but thank you for applying. Thank you for being here, and we wish you well.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.